Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video what I want to do is introduce JavaScript and jQuery. So just some really basic JavaScript, just enough so that way we can make use of jQuery. So one thing we're going to do is before we're going to practice JavaScript, so I would like it if you guys installed Node.js. Okay, just go to nodejs.org. Download the current version, latest features, okay, 14.50. You could also download the long-term support version if you want, but I have the current version. So if you want to match what I'm doing, just download this. So whatever, Mac, Linux, Windows, whatever you're on, it's pretty easy to download and install. Just click on this, get it installed, just so that way you can have the commands that I will be using. Cool. So first, let's just do a very basic primer on JavaScript. Okay. JavaScript is probably the the most used programming language. Why? Because everything's on the web these days, and JavaScript is the language of the web. Okay, it's the only way to really do real deal, general purpose programming in a web browser. Okay, I mean there's HTML, which is a markup language. There's CSS, which is a style language, but they're not a programming language in the same way that JavaScript, Python, Ruby are programming languages. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to create a little practice file. We'll just call it test.js just to show you how this works. So JavaScript files always have an extension of JS. I'm going to open up my terminal. I'm using VS Code as my editor. So if you want to use the same editor, it's called Visual Studio Code. And once you download Node, okay, I'm not going to get too deep into what all the things Node can do right now, but the main thing you can do is you can use it to run commands. So first, let me put some code in this test.js file. So the basic piece of code you really need to know is how to just print something to the console. It's console.log, okay, and since this is a function is just like a tool we can use. It always gets a parentheses for me to use the function. And in the function I can pass in what's called a string, a set of letters that can be sent to be printed to the screen. So I want to send the letters hello world. So again, anything in quotation marks is called a string. So this function called console.log, meaning I'm going to log data to the console, takes some information in the parentheses, in this case hello world, and we'll print that to the screen. Cool. So now if I go here in my terminal, I can just type in node, because I'm in the same folder in my terminal as my test.js file. I can do node test.js and see it runs the file. Okay, that's why you need Node.js, so that way I can run commands in the terminal. Okay. Other thing you need to know for this particular lesson is how to create variables. Okay, we'll keep it really simple. I'm not going to get into constants and scope and all that stuff, so we're just going to learn one way to do it for now. If you want to learn more, I have a lot of other JavaScript videos where I'll go more in depth, but the idea here is just to give you just enough to get to jQuery. So what we do is we say let, and then the name of the variable. So we'll say my variable equals, and you can equal a number or an integer, which could be like a number like 5 or 6. So we'll say 57. So we're going to set let my variable equals 57, and then I can console.log my var. That's a variable. So my var going forward equals 57. Okay. So now, if I do Node.js, see, it prints 57. Okay. And again, it doesn't just have to be this equals this. I could actually have an expression. Expression means there's going to be more things that happen before it actually assigns a value to the variable. So I can do +3. Okay, so what's going to happen is that this expression will be evaluated first. So 57 plus 3 equals 60. And then 60 will be stored in my variable. So the way you always want to think about it is my variable will equal the result of this expression over here. Okay? So you can end up having complicated expressions. So now if I run this code again, is equal to 60. Okay? And again, I can do then -4. So +3 is 60, -4 is 56. So if I run this code again, it's 56. Okay, so that's how variables work. Okay, whatever is on the right gets stored in the name on the left, but I gotta tell it that I'm making a new variable by using let. Once you've done let once, you don't have to do let again. But whenever you create a new variable, you gotta use let. Okay. Now, what if you have many individual variables? Okay, then you can use what's called an array. So you still use let. So we'll set my r for my array. Actually, I'll just spell out array. And for this, we'll use square brackets. And I can put in, let's say, several numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have these numbers stored in this array, a collection of data. So an array is a collection of data. Now what if I wanted to print out the number 3? I can do console.log my array, and then in square brackets I have to specify what index I want to use. The first one's always 0, so technically this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So I'm accessing the number in index 2. So this should print out the number 3, because in the index of 2 there is the number of 3. And there we go, 3. Okay? If I want to print out the 1, that'd be index 0. Okay, arrays always start with window 0 as the first spot. Okay? Cool. So now that we know this, we can now go visit jQuery World. That gives you enough JavaScript that we should be able to play with jQuery and be able to manipulate HTML, CSS. So I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, and we just call this jQuery. Okay. In this folder, we're going to create a new index.html. And I'm not going to, well, let's create a CSS, why not? New file, style.css, and a app.js, our JavaScript file. Now, first things first is we need to set up our index.html. So in VS Code, I can just type in HTML, use the 5, and huzzah! Nice. Okie dokie. Now, what happens is, what we need to do is we're going to link up our CSS file. So we're going to use a link tag, link CSS, and that already kind of connects to a CSS file. So style.css, style.css. And now we need to connect our JS file. So we're going to type in script. So script, I'm going to choose a script source one here. And I need a link to my app.js file, which you see over here. App.js, and I'm going to add a keyword called defer. You should always add this to your script tags. What it does is just make sure that your JavaScript doesn't run until your HTML has loaded. Because if you have code, jQuery is for manipulating HTML. Okay? jQuery is going to allow us to manipulate what's called the document object model, which is all the elements of your web page. But it can't manipulate them if they haven't loaded yet. So you need to defer so that way it waits till it's loaded. On that note, we should probably bring in the jQuery library. So let's open up Google Chrome. Okay. So open up Google Chrome, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to jquery.com. Go back there, and this is the website for jQuery. We can find all the information for jQuery. What we need is a thing that lets us bring in jQuery. So you can go to code.jquery.com, and that'll be a shortcut to where we need to get to. So we're going to choose right here jQuery 3.11, X, the current version of jQuery, hit uncompressed, and we're going to copy this script tag. Okay, so we're going to copy that script tag. Nice. And we're going to paste it above our link tag. So that way it's above all our custom stuff. You always want your custom CSS and your custom JS towards the bottom. But make sure you add a defer keyword on there as well, because we don't want jQuery loading until our HTML is loaded. And now we're set to go. Okay, now we can begin using so we're just going to put something so we can see what's on the screen. So we're going to put an H1. Okay. I'm going to say hello world, so that way it shows up on the screen. And then below that, I'm going to put a main tag. Okay, and we'll just use that. It's empty right now, but it's there. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to use an extension called Live Server. This is a Visual Studio extension. You can download extensions by going here and just downloading a Live Server, clicking on this area right here. The Live Server makes it really easy to right click on an index.html or any HTML file, open with Live Server, and queue it up. Okay, so here is our file. Cool. Now what I want to do is I'm going to use jQuery to manipulate that page. So we're going to go to our app.js file that we created, and we'll be able to enter jQuery code in here. Everything in jQuery revolves around this $sign function. So it's literally all this. Okay? $sign function. Okay? So let's say what I want to do is let's say I want to select that H1. Okay? So what I would do is I would do the $sign function, and then inside the $sign, okay, what you do is you put in a CSS selector. So how would I select that particular H1 tag? Well, I could just select the H1 element. So whatever, basically the way this works is all based on CSS selectors. So if you know how to grab a specific element with the CSS selector, you can put it in this string, and that's how you grab the element. So I'm saying grab the H1. Okay, so that's what this does. Okay, it's going to grab the H1, and then what I want to do is then once you grab the H1, I can then do stuff with it. So a function that's built in to jQuery is text. This allows me to change the text of the H1. So I will put in parentheses again to use that function, and then use quotation marks to say what the new text is going to be. Goodbye world. Okay. So let me just double check and see it changes it to goodbye world. It used to be hello world. Let's see, it changes like really quickly, because the minute the website loads, it runs my app.js. And then since we have jQuery loaded, and again, the reason why this doesn't cause an error is because we have defer keywords on both. Otherwise, you'd have to do some other tricks to get it to work. Okay, so basically what I'm saying here is grab the first H1 element. It always grabs the first one that it finds. So grab the first H1 element, okay, and change the text of that element to goodbye world. Okay, that's what that's doing. So I'm going to comment out that code. Now, what if I wanted to create a new element? So let's say I wanted to create a div, or another, let's say an H2 inside that main tag. So first we'll create the element. So first we're going to create the H2. Okay, and the way we're going to do that is you're going to do this. We're going to create a variable. So we're going to let, and we'll just call it H2, equal $, parentheses. Everything in jQuery is this $sign function. So you always know it's jQuery when we see the $sign. So actually convention is to start variables that hold jQuery objects with a $sign. Okay. H2 Okay, $sign. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new h2. So the string I pass in now is going to have these carets. Because I have the carets, instead of just grabbing an h2, it actually makes a new h2. So see the difference between this, where I'm grabbing an h1? This one is I'm creating an h1. So you got to put the carets in there for it to create. Okay, so this basically says I want to make an h2. Okay, but I want that h2 to have some text, so I'm going to add some text to it first. So I'm going to say that this text will be, look at me, I was made with jQuery. So what this does, it creates an h2 with the text, look at me, I was made with jQuery, and stores it in this variable h2. Okay, so that way we can use it again later. Now what we need to do is attach the h2 to the main tag. So once again, we're going to use the $sign function. Everything in jQuery is this $sign function. But now I'm going to grab the main tag for my HTML. So I'm going to grab this main tag here in a very simple way. Just by specifying the main tag, it's the only one. So I know it's going to grab that one. And then I'm going to use .append, which means it's going to append or add whatever is in the parentheses to the main element. So if I do append, and I decide to append, actually I don't need to do that in strings. Since it's a variable, I can just put in the name of the variable. So I append the h2, so we're appending what we stored in this variable to the main tag. So now if I go back here, look at me, I was made with jQuery. So if I were to open up the inspector, the Chrome DevTools, we'll see here, look at that. In my main tag, there's an h2 that says, look at me, I was made with jQuery. But when I go back in my HTML file, it doesn't exist there. I don't see it. Because the way jQuery works is you're manipulating the DOM. The way the browser works is that the browser reads your HTML and then generates sort of a living, breathing version of your website. So your HTML is really just a blueprint. And then from that blueprint, it creates a living, breathing thing called the document object. Okay? Now this document object is basically your HTML tag and everything below it. So it starts with your HTML tag, and then underneath that is your body, and then underneath that is your h1s and divs, and underneath that, basically this is where you get the whole idea of child and parent. Okay, so HTML is the most parent element, and then the child of HTML is body, and the child of that is whatever, whatever, whatever. So what we're doing is we're using JavaScript to manipulate that document object that now exists. So that's essentially what's happening when we use jQuery. Okay, so to show you some other cool things we can do with jQuery. So as we already can see, I can change the text of something, I can create new elements and add them. Okay. Let's create an event. So what I'm going to do is first let's make a button. So we're going to create a button. Okay, so we're going to create a new variable, let button equal a new button, because again it's new. I'm creating a new button because I'm using the carets. So carets always mean new, create something new. Okay, create a new button, and the button text is going to say click me. Cool. And that's cool. So right now the button doesn't do anything. But let's say I want the button to do something. Okay, I want it when you click on it to do a little pop-up. Okay. Then what I can do is I can say button dot on. On means do something during an event. So button dot on. Then we specify the event, click. So on click, comma, then we put in a function. Okay, I'm not going to get into making functions for this video. This is just real introductory stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a built-in function called alert. Alert does a little pop-up message. Okay, so I'm going to do alert hello. Okay. Oh. I didn't. Okay. On click alert. Okay. Yeah, okay, I need to change that a little bit. Okay, because the problem is, since I'm using the parentheses, it automatically runs the function. So I have to do what's called an arrow function. Don't worry too much about what an arrow function is at this point, but all I'm really doing is I'm describing a new function right in this function. I'm literally just saying, hey, there's this new function called this. Okay, and then you just use the syntax, so it's a parentheses, then an arrow, then curly brackets, and then I can put what I want to happen inside that. So here I want to put alert hello. Okay, so basically that's how that works. I'm saying, hey, when you click, I want this to happen. Okay, whenever you click on this button, I want this to happen. So now what I'm going to do is attach that button to the main. Okay, so we're going to do, once again, I have to grab main because I didn't store it in a variable. So I probably should have. So we're going to grab main dot append. So I'm attaching it. And I'm going to append the button we created, the button that has that click event. Okay, nice. Now that button is created, is appended. So let's go take a look at our page. And here's that button. Now when I click on it, it should trigger that function. Hello, it works. Every time I click on it, it's going to say hello. 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 Okay, so what have we learned? We learned that I can modify existing elements. So we did that when we changed the text of the H1 to goodbye world. We've learned that we can create new elements and attach them to the DOM if we know what we're attaching it to. Okay, and we know that we can create a button and create events. So when you click on this button, this thing happens. Okay, so there's a lot of flexibility in how what you can do with jQuery. Let me just show you a few more things. Okay, you can also add a class. So for example, let's say down here, I decide I want to take that button and I'm going to add a class to it. I think it's actually called add class. And then we can just pass in a class name. So we'll just say cheese. Okay, so I'm adding the class cheese to the button. So let's just double check in the inspector, does this button have the class cheese now? Main. And see, it has the class cheese. Okay. Very nice. Which means now I can go over here. Cheese. So actually, it's CSS, so it's dot cheese for a class. And we're going to say background color becomes blue. Okay, so now I'm going to change this. I'm going to say that happens after you click the button. So I'm going to put it in the event. So that's going to go here. So when you click it, it's going to turn the button, add the cheese class, and when you add the cheese class, it should make the background color blue. Okay, so let's watch what happens. So right now the click button looks normal. I click on it. Okay, and the button becomes blue. Okay, so you can create events that modify how the screen looks, which is really cool. Okay, and you can grab elements by other means. So I can do something like this, like go back to see here. Let's add an element here. Let's add a div with the class of hello. Okay. What I can do is that, again, I use, because that's why it's called jQuery. you're querying the DOM. You're querying all the elements on your HTML page to grab them. So in CSS, oh no, I just want the $sign. So normally in CSS, how would I refer to that class? Well, I would do .hello. Okay, so that's what I can use. You're using the same selectors as you do in your CSS. Okay. Okay, and your CSS. So I can say .hello, and then I can change the text and say the text is now going to be this text was added with jQuery. Okay, oh, why am I doing node? Okay, so see, this text was added with jQuery. Because again, in our HTML, this div with the class hello has no text. But it does now. Why? Because with jQuery, we were able to grab it with our $sign function and then use .text. And there's a whole bunch of different functions you can use. These are just a few. Okay, but just with this few, you can already do a lot of very powerful things. Okay, as far as making your sites more dynamic, more exciting, etc. So jQuery has a lot in it. It's a huge library. Part of the reason why usage of it has kind of faded because it is so big, but it's an important thing to learn as you're learning web development, because it allows you to create more dynamic websites. But also it helps you understand what later libraries like React, Angular, and Vue, what they're doing for you, okay? Because they basically came after jQuery and made things even, in some ways, easier, in some ways harder than it was when you had when jQuery was the king of the land, okay? But you can go through the jQuery documentation. So if you go to jQuery core, okay, or let's see here, let's just go back to the main jQuery website. Okay, you can go through the documentation and find that there's all sorts of things that jQuery can do. Okay, endless amounts of different functions you can chain off as you grab different things from the DOM. Okay, it's almost kind of its own little language into itself that makes working with the DOM a lot easier. So it's always good to kind of read through these docs, play with them, learn how to use some of these things. But remember, for it to work, you have to have the script tag for jQuery. Make sure it has that defer keyword. Okay, if you don't have that defer keyword, then you have to do something else. Make sure you have your link. Well, you don't need to have your link to your CSS if you're not doing anything with CSS. And then you link to your own JavaScript file. Again, use the defer keyword. So hopefully in this video, even if you knew HTML and CSS, but you haven't really yet worked with JavaScript, hopefully this gave you enough usage of JavaScript so to appreciate what we're doing when we use jQuery. I do recommend to watch this video again and practice doing some of the things that we went over, so that way you get more comfortable with it. But hopefully this gave you a nice introduction to jQuery and JavaScript and working with the DOM. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy. Okay, and make sure to go join the Slack community over there at devnursery.com so you can meet other cool developers who are all hanging out and talking at devnursery.com. See you guys later on. Ciao.